560, The Answer.
In Chicago right now, 67 at O'Hare, 68 at Midway. Your next news update, 6:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. We spent the first hour talking about last night's Downers Grove Village Board meeting. The issue that we brought to you yesterday was this removal of a gentleman named Bill Neinburg from the library board by the village board, because in Downers Grove, library board trustees are appointed by the mayor. Mm-hmm. And the importance of this at the local level is, as I've said, it's a microcosm of what's happening around the country, certainly around DuPage County and around Chicagoland and Illinois. The kind of rapaciousness on display of the censorious left. And you can call yourself a nonpartisan board, and you can talk about consensus building all you want. You listen to Leslie Sadowski Fugit for 3 minutes, and you go ahead and howl at the moon if you're going to try and convince me that this is not a bitter, vitriolic, angry, leftist partisan activist.
Text messages, who wears the pants in Leslie's house?
Yeah. I hear she's a strong proponent of bringing marijuana dispensaries to Downers Grove, too. Yeah. Getting some feedback from Downers Grove residents, a little bit more color on these individuals.
Defile yourselves even more, Downers Grove.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I don't think that she's winning the day on that issue yet. But yet, as you see these communities self-immolate. Greg Hose or Jose, whatever. He had something to say to people who, like residents who spoke up on behalf of Neinburg, and said, what about viewpoint diversity on the board? You're basically just running him off the board on a rail because he disagrees with the manifestations of your ideological bent, which is indeed patently obvious, but of course denied by Leslie Sadowski Fugit and others. Like Greg Hose. Take a listen.
Those, including Mr. Neinburg, who would make this about a conservative viewpoint versus any other, only call attention to yet another breach. Mr. Neinburg is not the conservative representative, as he himself stated in an email to us. He doesn't represent any conservative constituency. His constituency is the entire village of Downers Grove, regardless of race, creed, color, sex, sexual orientation, or any other marker you might want to put out there. To those who have advocated for more conservative voices on the library board, heed this advice. It is entirely hypocritical to engage in viewpoint-based advocacy one moment while decrying it the next.
Heed this advice, Greg, who I guess holds himself out as some sort of attorney, but union attorney, so, heed this advice, Greg. By the way, Greg Hose, another one who's, he's nonpartisan. Really? Right. He's a Democrat candidate for state rep against Ron Zandak. He's going to lecture. Hey, heed this advice to your fallacious line of reasoning. Nobody is suggesting that a conservative would only represent those who agree with them in any position. Library board, village board, president of the United States. That's obvious. To suggest that that is the position of anybody defending Bill Neinburg is to erect a straw man that you knock down, which is what hacks do. And you're a hack. You're a partisan hack, just as your fellow travelers on that board are. Chris Gilmartin, endorsed by Sean Casten. Not a partisan, though. I proudly endorse Chris Gilmartin, Sean Casten. And Sean Casten's not a partisan either. Nobody's partisan. It's funny. The Democrats are completely nonpartisan. It's just these extremists who disagree with them that are sullying our good government with partisan politics. Right.
Trustee Neinburg doesn't seem to show the slightest bit of reflection or ownership or humility in any of his formal responses to his body, including the statement that was read to us tonight. His communication to the council has been simply denial, defiance, blame, and victimhood. Based on the lack of support from the balance of the board, his lack of effectiveness, and his lack of willingness to change, I'm compelled to support this resolution, and I will vote for it.
For more on this, please be joined by the aforementioned William Neinburg. Bill, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thanks for bringing this issue up.
No, my pleasure. It's been illuminating, and I think so for our listeners as well. And obviously, as we know, these are fights that are happening, as I mentioned, in a lot of places, including recently. Josh McBroom in Naperville is a good example. But anyway, on to your case. We we played a portion of the statement that your brother-in-law read on your behalf since you were unable to attend because you had work responsibilities. And I don't know how much of it you've been able to see from last night, but there were many residents who spoke up on your behalf very thoughtfully. And then there was Leslie Sadowski-Fugit and Greg Hose and Chris Gilmartin, and Mayor Barnett on your side, but sort of somewhere in the middle intellectually. So, just give us your perspective on this, and particularly if you want to respond to all the slime that was thrown in your direction from those trustees who moved this on you. Please do.
Well, I had to stop watching after Leslie's comments because that was enough to remind me that I'd forgotten my blood pressure medicine at home and needed to go to bed. So I have to watch the rest of it to see what the rest of the other comments were. Leslie and many of the others are still grinding an axe from the drag queen bingo event from 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And this was the culmination of a 2-year-long effort to exact revenge for my stance against that event.
Well, why don't you want the drag queen bingo?
Why don't I want the drag queen bingo?
Yeah, tell us.
It's a completely inappropriate event for a public library. That's a starting point. It doesn't afford the dignity that the LGBTQ community deserves. It is not the best representation of the LGBT community. If they wanted to celebrate Coming Out Day and help teens that are going through a period of life where they're coming to grips with their identity, there are much better ways to do that than trotting a sexualized drag queen event into a library.
It's funny. There was a resident who during public comment who said exactly that, and he was referencing a conversation he had with a gay friend of his who was also opposed to the drag queen bingo for the exact same reason. Why are they always presenting people who are gay as these like just hypersexualized individuals? And so I mean that's well within the bounds of substantive, thoughtful discourse on the topic, but. Yeah. I think what Leslie Sadowski...
I'm sure you guys remember David Olson, Representative Olson.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who is part of the LGBT community. And when this happened, I asked David to come meet me for coffee because this is how it struck me. But I wanted to hear from someone who is in that life and who has lived that experience. And David validated my point of view that this is not how that community wants to be represented. And I think the gentleman that spoke last night did a good job of reinforcing that.
Yeah, it's funny. I supported David Olson when he replaced Sandak and when he ran back when he ran for COD and then when he ran for state legislative office and ran for re-election and so forth. And so did Jeannie Ives. And I know that we're characterized, and I think we were characterized yesterday by Leslie Sadowski as part of the extremists that are ruining Downers Grove from afar and the country and all that. Supported David Olson. He's gay. So whatever. And then I stopped supporting him, not because he's gay, but because of his voting record on certain things where he did a 180 on us in terms of what he said he would do versus what he did. And I don't need to get into the details. But that's the sort of nuance that is just completely lost on the Leslie Sadowskis and the Greg Hoses and the Chris Gilmartins of the world.
Yeah, exactly. I think, this was not a conversation about David's political view. This is a conversation about David's feelings as a person. Mm-hmm. And I speculated how that might feel, but he validated it. The other thing that Leslie was really infuriated about was, she wanted to vilify everybody who was opposed to this event and paint them as anti-LGBTQ. And I made a comment from the dais that said, if you're opposed to this, you have every right to be opposed to this. And you should not bow to these attacks that try to paint you as intolerant or that you're motivated by hate. You can be motivated by right thinking and land on the side of opposition of a drag queen event in a library.
So why don't you go to coffee with Leslie? She seemed a little.
She's very
Up in
upset you didn't
arms that-
reschedule that coffee
Yes.
so she could coach you up. Very
I
upset.
had no idea she was so offended about that coffee. That was approximately 2 years ago.
Oh my
And
gosh.
apparently this has been bothering her for 2 years, which makes me feel really bad.
She has difficulty letting go, I think, is pretty well established at
She
this
wants to
point.
control you.
Now, Leslie was really good last night. Hers was the only comment that I watched. She was really good at stringing together half-truths and making it sound like a plausible story. She pasted together that coffee story from 2 years ago, which was on the heels of the Drag Queen Bingo event. And then she tried to make it sound like she had reached out to me via an email. That email that she sent to me was in response to one that I had sent to her, trying to answer to the allegations in the library censure. So to paint that as something that she took the initiative to do and that I never responded was completely misleading. But
Bill-
most of her comments were misleading.
Bill, she has conservative friends she talks to all the time at the bus stop and other fictional places she goes with her conservative friends. And they're very understanding. She is a woman for all in Downers Grove, according to her.
I'm not sure she represents all in Downers Grove. I think that was pretty clear last night. Leslie wants to run for mayor, which should frighten everybody. And this was likely a calculated political play for her to gain support from a portion of the community that she thinks gets very motivated by this kind of activity.
And the other three, that present as, we're dispassionate business professionals who are here to serve our community. We don't have time for these partisan politics that are so bedeviling America these days, even though I've run for state rep and I'm involved in the Democratic Party and so on and so forth. What about those other three gentlemen?
Well, the two out of the three were no surprise. I mean, Greg Jose and Chris Gilmartin were also very offended by my stance on Drag Queen Bingo, and they've been grinding that axe for 2 years. The surprise was Mike Davenport, who ran as a pseudo-conservative, pseudo-Republican in the last election and completely abandoned those voters last night when he voted with the newly formed progressive bloc of the Downers Grove Village Council.
So
Yeah.
what are you gonna do now?
Maybe get
Well,
reappointed to the Economic Development Board, or
Yeah.
I mean, you're not gonna give
I'm
up, are you?
No, definitely not. This is not going away. There's a number of issues we're following up on. There may be some legal challenges to this. They added at the last minute wording to the resolution last night that said neglect of duty and misconduct. And they did
Right.
that because somebody had made them aware that their motion as it stood was not in compliance with a state statute that had passed since the last time they railroaded a conservative off the library board. And so they added that language at the last minute, and I think they did that in ignorance of the legal standard that comes with the term misconduct and neglect of duty.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because we played Martin Tully's response to that. Martin Tully, who's a trustee and an attorney, and I thought his explanation of the threshold that misconduct and neglect of office require, the threshold you have to clear to make that charge stick, was very good. And, based on his characterization of the evidence in support of that claim, sounds pretty thin. But I think one of the other things, and the mayor said this, I'm voting against this because basically to vote for it is to implicate ourselves since we have the appointment power. Well, that's true. So, so even though he voted with you, He sort of, it was a little bit of Pontius Pilate from the dais with the mayor. And, I think people looking at the from the outside in and maybe have some memories of Downers Grove once upon a time, have the, what happened? What happened to Downers Grove question? How was you represented by, Anna Stava Murray and Leslie Sadowski Fugit, and why is a mayor who otherwise comes across as sensible appointing these rabid political activists to the library board and allowing them to silence or push out anybody who disagrees with them? I mean, we're sort of just like, what the hell's going on here?
Out with a lot of fire and brimstone, but Bob is a friend. I have nothing bad to say about him. He is dealing with a difficult situation, and Bob is by nature a consensus builder. Mm-hmm. So I think he's doing the best he can. One of the problems we have, and the reason that he appointed or had to appoint somebody who is also not a conservative, is we had a board seat come up within the last year, and we were not able to find quality candidates, which is another sign of the almost incredible flip that's happened in Downers Grove and really DuPage County at large.
Right. You just don't have, I mean, they're just not there, or to the extent they're there, they're just not interested in engaging.
If you were a conservative and you watched what just happened to me, would you put your neck out there?
Right.
It's difficult when you see the effectiveness of the cancel culture machine and how quickly and efficiently they orchestrate things like this, which, by the way, Leslie was in cahoots with the library board members that drove this. She was not responding to their request. She was part of the development of the censure and actually surfaced her resolution before the censure had even passed, interestingly. So we're trying to dig into that a little bit more, but of course there was skullduggery afoot. This is the standard operating procedure, right? Yeah, but the transformation of Downers Grove and DuPage County is troubling, and we have to do a better job of recruiting people and getting people to step up and help out. All right, so you're staying. You're not moving to Florida or Scottsdale or anything. You're going to stay. You're going to stick it out. I would love to move to Florida or Scottsdale, but my wife's family's from here. We love our community. We love our church. We love our school and our friends and our kids' friends, and we're going to stick it out. All right. Bill Neinburg, former, for now, library board trustee in Downers Grove. I'm working on appointing myself as the new president of the library board of trustees, so maybe I'll come back and share some plans. There you go. The shadow board. I like that. All right, Bill, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Sure thing. You guys have a good day.
Thanks, you too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Relief Factor, pain relief that's natural, pain relief that works, and pain relief that attacks the source of the pain. That's the experience of tens of thousands of Americans who are taking Relief Factor right now. See their incredible video endorsements at relieffactor.com and then order your 3-week quick starter pack for just $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. Find out if it can work for you like it works for me by ordering your 3-week quick starter pack today. relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Be the next success story.
Are you over 30 and putting off life insurance? It's time to get a quick quote from Ethos, a better, easier way to get term life insurance, all online with no medical exam. Answer a few health questions and you could be approved for up to $2 million. Isn't it worth 10 minutes to help protect your family's financial security? Ethos, up to $2 million in coverage with no medical exam. Some policies as low as $1 a day. Answer a few health questions and get your free quote at checkethos.com. That's checkethos.com.
Raj Shah, host of Unleash Your Wealth.
You know, there are a lot of clients and people coming in from the radio into our office saying, I don't want to lose any money. I need to protect the money I have saved over the last 20 or 30 years, where you have strategies where you can structure an income stream where it has an inflation protection so that as inflation, if it continues to go up, your income will go up.
Unleash Your Wealth, Saturday at 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. on AM 560, The Answer.
Are you ready for an adventure of a lifetime? Journey with me, Mike Gallagher, and Dr. Sebastian Gorka on the Patriots Alaska cruise this summer. It's going to be an incredible opportunity to engage with other like-minded patriots on an epic 7-day cruise over 4th of July. Witness the untouched wilderness of Alaska while discussing America's future. Join Dr. Gorka and me, Mike Gallagher, from June 29th through